The 2023-24 college basketball season is finally here. Indiana, they're going to tip off against Florida Gulf Coast to open up the season, and it's the first regular season game since legendary Indiana coach Bob Knight has passed. Knight had a complicated legacy, but his name is still synonymous with IU basketball. He won 3 national titles with IU in 1976, 1981, and 87. Current Indiana head coach Mike Woodson played for Bobby Knight from 76 to 80. Woodson saying Knight, quote, influenced my life in ways I could never repay, end quote. And getting a look at just some of Bob Knight's accolades, it is a very, very long list. 42 seasons as a college head coach, won 3 national titles with Indiana. You can see it there, 76, 81, 87, went to 5 Final Fours. Again, Indiana's first regular season game since Knight passed. That is tonight against FGCU. And we have publisher of Peegs.com, Jeff Rabjohn's here to talk about Bob Knight's impact on IU basketball. Jeff, we know it's a complicated legacy, but still won 3 national titles. His name is synonymous with IU basketball. So I want to ask you, what is the sense around this program since Knight has passed going into this first game since that happened, the first regular season game, I should say?
Yeah, I think the biggest sense is that the man who is IU basketball, who personified it for pretty much not only everybody who played for IU, but for people who followed it both from in the state and from afar, that the man who was IU basketball is gone. And there's a profound sense of loss for a number of reasons. You know, he was great at what the state of Indiana basketball loves the most, what the state of Indiana loves the most, and that is basketball. You know, like you said, 3 national titles, 5 Final Fours, recruited the roster that went to the 2022 Final Four, 11 Big Ten titles, you know, the 76 team, the last unbeaten national championship team. You know, he still remains the only, or the last coach to win a national championship with no first-round NBA draft picks, and that happened in 1987, so that's 3.5 decades ago. And in the state of Indiana, he was simply revered. And yes, you know, he had some missteps. Everybody understands that. You know, he at times he painted a basketball Mona Lisa, and then with certain behaviors, kind of spray painted graffiti on top of it. And people, you know, cringed at times. Everybody knows that. But in the state of Indiana, he was basketball, and he personified for many the basketball ideal. You know, it's interesting. A friend of mine who was worked in TV and Indy for decades told me there's only 2 people they identify by name only without needing a job title or what people call like the lower third, as whoever's president of the United States at the time and Bob Knight. And that's kind of who he was in the state. He was Bob Knight. He was an incredible figure. You know, current IU player Anthony Leal tweeted a phrase recently that's been on T-shirts and hats in the state of Indiana for decades, and that phrase is, "The Lord is my shepherd, but Bobby Knight is my coach." And that's kind of how it was in Indiana. You can go to church on Sunday, but you better understand who rules the hardwood on Saturday in Assembly Hall.
Yeah, it's just remarkable to hear all of his accomplishments, and Isaiah Thomas, the only future NBA All-Star that he coached, with all of those feats, which is just crazy. Jeff, how are they going to honor him tonight and moving forward, Indiana basketball men and women's teams?
Yeah, they had a ceremony for him earlier during one of their exhibition games when he had recently passed. Moment of silence, video tribute, and some other things. But for the course of the season, both the IU men and women's teams are going to wear patches on their uniforms that say RMK for Robert Montgomery Knight. And obviously the 3 dots, the 3 stars you see there are for his 3 national championships. You know, a lot of people, you know, have told their stories. And there's a lot of outpouring of emotion, but the patch is the way Indiana's going to honor him throughout the course of the year.
And Jeff, I know you talked about the T-shirt and you talked about him not needing a title on some of those lower thirds, and that just speaks to the impact that he's had in so many stories. And even when you hear Mike Woodson, the current IU head coach, talk about Bobby Knight, you can just see the relationship that he had, how much he meant to him. I know you've spoken to a lot of people in the community. Are there any other stories that stuck with you that you want to share?
Well, there's so many people tell so many different stories about Coach Knight, and I think one of the best ones is one that his son Pat Knight shares. And this was actually speaks to Knight, who he was, even in the later stages of his coaching career. He's at Texas Tech. They got some younger guys who feel like, oh, this practice is too hard. Coach is being too hard on us. So Bob Knight says, okay, you know what? Sends a manager out. Go get me some ice cream. Go get me some vanilla. Go get me some chocolate. Go get a couple cakes. They think this is too hard. We're gonna be nice to them. All right, boys, come in here. You want ice cream? I got it. There's Bob Knight, Hall of Famer, up there with the ice cream scoop. Scoop. Here you go. Little ice cream. Go get some cake too. So the players are like, what's going on? Coach Knight's not yelling. Coach Knight's not upset. We're having terrible practices. So he's really, really nice to him, over the top nice. He leaves. The players realize, oh, wait a minute, he's sending a message that we're too soft. The players on their own decide to have their own player run 2-hour practice because they got the message he was sending. And that's an interesting story about Knight really understood psychology of players at an incredible level. And yes, there were times he was the firebrand. Everybody's seen all those images. But there were other times he knew when to push different buttons. And to me, that's really interesting that there was so much going on in that mind as it relates to basketball and as it relates to just how to motivate people and how to sort of push buttons at certain times with different tactics.
And the head coach now, Mike Woodson, he said he has shaped my life, my career. I wouldn't be a head coach without him. Now he's leading this IU team. When you look at this Indiana basketball team under Woodson, they're starting their campaign tonight versus FGCU. What is their outlook in the Big Ten specifically, and then as a whole on the season?
Yeah, he's been retooling the roster. He's been improving the talent level. And I think when you look at the team on the floor this year, one thing that jumps out quickly is the talent on the front court. They added national top 10 prospect Mackenzie Mbako. He's a freshman. They added Kelly Ware, a 7-foot transfer from Oregon, who was a 5-star coming out of high school. They have Malik Renault, who is a national top 40 player coming out of powerhouse Montverde Academy. And so they have a lot of talent on the front line. And then in the backcourt, you have a very experienced 6-year point guard in Xavier Johnson. Somebody knows how to turn the corner in ball screen action, which is something that Mike Woodson really likes. You've got kind of a glue guy, a facilitator, an improving shooter, and a guy like Trey Galloway, and then some other pieces, Caleb Banks, CJ Gunn, guys like that who you look at and see, the potential that they could take steps. So I think you're looking at probably an NCAA tournament team. What are they going to be capable of at that point in time? We'll see. I think a little bit of it's going to depend upon how well do they shoot the three, how well do they defend. And under Mike Woodson, just as under Bob Knight, you're going to have to defend. Everybody knows that. So I think their defense should be pretty solid. I think they'll be a contender to have a chance to finish top 4, maybe in the Big Ten. And I think they'll be an NCAA tournament team again.
And we just saw the odds there for IU to win the Big Ten. It is 15-1. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us to talk about Bobby Knight's legacy in IU basketball. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And getting a look at some notable basketball games for tonight. Of course, we have Indiana taking on FGCU to open up their season, I should say. That is their first regular season game since Bobby Knight has passed. We got Stony Brook in St. John's. The Rick Pitino era begins at St. John's. Ed Cooley, his debut for Georgetown. And then Auburn versus Baylor at 9 p.m. Eastern. And our 24/7 sports crew, they are your source for all things college basketball, college sports in general. They have news, recruiting, transfers, and so much more. Make sure you check out their YouTube page, or you can head to 247sports.com.